Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fan Friction. I'm your host, Jack Shipley. Glad to see you. Thanks for joining us. Today, we have a very special match for you. Today is a #1 contenders match for Kimber Barrett's belt. Say that 10 times real fast. So, guys, I have 3 fighters. They've all fought it out. They're ready to fight today. Let's introduce them. Our first guest makes robots for Disney. That's all I need to say. She's also made a New Year's resolution to win on Fan Friction. She did it last month. She's here today as a #1 contender. Please welcome back Kim Hanley.
Hey guys, it's great to be here. Hoping to make it 2 in a row.
Oh wait, they didn't get to see you because I pushed the button. Let's pretend. Kim Hanley.
Oh hey, hi. Nice to be seen for the first time. Just looking to make it 2 in a row.
Good. Thank you very much. Our second guest is, starting a Twitter war with Brian. And he said, I can beat you, Brian. And so we decided, hey, let's do another season of this show so that Yusuf can come and try to beat Brian. So that's why he's here. He's a #1 contender, Yusuf Kanessa. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. I talked my way into the tournament. I talked my way into a first win, and I guess I'm going to try to talk now to win against Brian.
We are glad to have you back. Thanks for joining us. Finally, he is former champion and host of DVD Bunker. Please welcome back to the show, Brian Hurst.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I'm the only one who is coasting off former glories to get here today. But you know what? I think my past performances speak for themselves, and I'm ready to get back in the game myself against 2 worthy competitors, or, one and Yusuf.
And, Brian designed the belt. He really would like to have his belt back. So, that's why we figured we'd give him
in the interim, I have this sweet shirt, though. Janine the Bean, hit me up. G9 Designs, baby.
You can find the link in the description below. Thanks. Janine does all of our logos, so we really appreciate her help. And, of course, to judge a show, I need some help. I need some facts. I need some social media. And that's why we returned a good friend of ours, Randall Sands. Thank you for coming and helping us out today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Glad to be back to help out, especially for such a big match.
This is going to be a big one. I want to remind everybody that you can join the conversation in the chat of the video or on Twitter with the hashtag #ThisIsTuff, TUFF. Randall will do his best to kind of get you involved in the show, but of course he's going to be doing it by himself today. Normally we have a 2-person team. Kimber is kind of sitting this one out to make sure that it's fair, since this is a belt first #1 contender match. So if you've never seen the show before, what are you doing on episode 3 of season 4? I mean, seriously, thank you for joining us. Let's get right into it. Guys, we're going to start with the speed round. Kim Hanley, you're going to open us out. I'm going to give you 5 categories. You're going to pick the one you like the best. Our categories today are The Gunslinger, It's High Noon, #1 contenders, The Gloves Are Off, or TV's Best Comedy. What would you like?
Let's go It's High Noon.
It's High Noon. I'm going to keep saying that for you, Matt Mercer. All right. Here's how this will work. I'm going to read the question. You guys are going to spit out your answers. The first one who I hear first goes first, and then you're going to have 30 seconds and 15 seconds to argue. Best argument wins a point and control of round 1. Here we go. It's High Noon. The question is, what is the best movie with any kind of drug use? What is the best movie with any kind of drug use? These are 3 sober people.
Beer Fest.
Okay. Beer Fest.
Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Walk Hard for Brian.
This is the end.
And that was This Is the End?
Yep.
Okay. From Yusuf. So I heard Kim first. Let me just grab the timekeeping score phone of logging off too frequently. There we go. Okay, the timer is ready. The bell is ready. Kim, time begins when you start talking. Go for it.
So Beer Fest is just a top quality comedy movie put out by Broken Lizard. They take full advantage of just doing things to an excess degree without making the consumption, they're drinking tons and tons and tons of beer throughout the movie, and it's just on such a level beyond practical. It just makes light of everything and keeps everything really jokey and just fun without getting bogged down in oh my god, they're over consuming it. We just sort of suspend disbelief that yes, they can drink 10 gallons of beer in 5 minutes and not die and just have a good time, and it's just fun.
All right, Brian, Walk Hard whenever you're ready.
In Walk Hard, not only do we get one drug. We get Dewey getting to run the gamut of every drug that every historical musical figure has ever tried. He gets to be on PCP and flip cop cars and climb buildings. He gets to jump on a trampoline on acid with the Beatles. Not only does and then you have, I'm sorry, Tim Meadows' classic lines about all the things that drugs don't do to you, all the dispelling every rumor and every myth about certain different drugs.
All right, Yusuf, whenever you're ready.
So This Is the End is it's the combination of all of the comedy stars that we've loved over the 2000s, and they decided to play on the stereotypes of what they've become in the public eye. You have Seth Rogen, James Franco reuniting again to just smoke weed, drink alcohol, and face the apocalypse together in a huge end of all parties, in where they just go down the whirlwind of paranoia, infueled by drugs, alcohol, and just the sheer fact that the world just ended.
Time. All right, Kim, rebuttal, 15 seconds.
So This Is the End is basically just stoner actors playing stoner versions of themselves. It doesn't really accomplish anything useful or of value. And Dewey Cox, while a lot of fun, it's all over the place. Like, yeah, you said they throw every drug at you and imaginable, and it's, all the different decades of music, but it's just whatever.
Brian.
I would say, although Beer Fest is good, it's really more of a parody of sports movies, and the better drug use movie from Broken Lizard is really Super Troopers. And then This Is the End, that's just such a tiny part of that movie. It's like a blip in the radar. They do one binge. Dewey Cox spans his whole career. He tests out everything.
And Yusuf, the final word.
So This Is the End is a meta story about its actors, and they throughout the entire movie are doing drugs and drinking alcohol despite the world ending outside of their doors. Beer Fest is just a stereotype, playing on stereotypes, which kind of gets boring. And Dewey Cox, it is all over the place.
Time. Ooh, good first round, guys. Randall, I'm going to get you involved in this right away. You heard the arguments. Which one appealed to you the most?
Out of the three, I would have to probably side with Brian's argument the most.
And what was it about Brian's argument that appealed to you?
I think he just kind of brought up more aspects of the movie and how it played into like the usage of drugs versus the others just kind of being one instance or being based around just one thing in general. Like his just kind of spanned the career that, like you said.
All right, so you got to vote in for Brian. So I'm going to pick the winner here. For me, it is between Brian and Kim. I think, Yusuf, you did spend a lot of time talking about your movie, but you didn't really take enough swings at your opponents. And I think that they really hit you hard as far as the one scene. And I like the the stoners doing stoner things comment. So it did fall down between Beer Fest and Walk Hard for me. I think, Brian, you had an advantage there going with the second rebuttal because I really did like that shot of like, oh, it's really more of a sports movie than a beer movie. And it's not, and the Super Troopers comment, I think was the right call. That was a good attack. For me, Brian is going to get the point. So well done, sir. Brian wins first round. The fix is in. Let's start the tweeting.
No shutout, baby. I'm not getting shut out today.
Not today, sir. Okay.
That's it. Mission accomplished.
You have control of round one, Brian. Who should go first? Who should go second? And who should go third?
Let's go ahead and have Yusuf go first. And I'll go second, and then I'll let Kim bring up the rear.
Okay. You got it. Guys, here is your round one question. What is the best TV Western? And we're starting with Yusuf. Whenever you're ready, buddy.
So I chose Gunsmoke, the television series I ran for 20 seasons from 1955 to 1975, which lasted 635 episodes. It's centered around Matt Dillon, a marshal who is in charge of Dodge City, a town in the Wild Wild West, where nobody has a respect for the law. The reason why I chose it is not only is it like the longest running primetime live action series of the 20th century, It was praised during its time for being an unprecedented for its realism. During that time, a lot of the westerns that were on television kind of had like campy vibe to them, or they wanted to focus more on the light side of the Wild Wild West, while Gunsmoke really wanted to go deep dive into the realism of the West, of the dangers of living out in the desert, of the tropes of the saloons, the horses, the outlaw, the blacksmith. Like every single thing that you think about when you talk about a Western has been touched upon or highlighted in Gunsmoke throughout the entire season's run. And that's my opener.
All right, wonderful, good pick, Brian. What was your choice?
All right, so I picked a show that was so good that even though only 11 of its original episodes aired, and they aired out of order, it still has managed to have a following almost 20 years later, 15 years later. I'm talking about Firefly, the beloved classic, gone too soon, cut down in its prime. You know, there'd been an oversaturation of Westerns in the 60s and into the 70s, and like it literally killed off the whole genre. There just was nothing going on. And then it took people like Whedon, who brought like some fresh perspective to it. You know, he took your tropes, all your tropes from Westerns are there as far as like your characters, you know, the gruff with a heart of gold, his loyal second in command, your comic relief, your man of God with a past. All this stuff is there. It's all etched in. You turn space into the West, a lawless area. You get to talk about the Civil War in a way where you get to cut out that unpleasantness about being about slavery and just like address the idea of what it's like to be on the side that lost without having to wonder about, you know, how you should feel about those characters. And I think that was an interesting take that is often overlooked about this show. It's just a really strong, well-written piece of art that still stands up and has a really strong cult following. I'll go ahead and let Kim talk. I don't want to go on too long here. All
right, Firefly. And then Kim, what did you pick?
So I chose Maverick, which was like a comedy Western through the 50s and 60s. It had about 5 seasons, 120 something episodes. It's a good, light-hearted Western that really connected with people. You know, my big thing with them, you know, there's 3 Maverick brothers and a cousin across the course of the seasons. There was only ever one of them in an episode or 2 of them in an episode at a time. They kept things, you know, focused on those core characters, and they were card sharps. They weren't gunslingers. They weren't, you know, sheriffs. They weren't outlaws. They were just, you know, guys trying to, you know, they got a little bit of a side game hustle sort of thing. They weren't pure, but they were moral. They always did what was right at the end of the day when it came down to choosing between money or doing what was right. What was right would win out. And, you know, it was a take on the West that was a lot cleaner than a lot of other Westerns. You know, you look at the ones where it was all, you know, the Indians are savages and tearing apart the West and hitting wagon trains, and those kinds of shows were, especially looking back on them now, are so problematic. And everyone was just like, well, yeah, you know, kill the Indians. Whoa, time out. But Maverick stayed away from that kind of stuff. It kept things light. It kept things fresh. It enjoyed the setting of the West without getting bogged down in a lot of the things that other Westerns did at the time, including Gunsmoke with its ultra realism approach. And it's just, for me, it's a lot of fun. It's a story that resonated with people well enough that it eventually got adapted into a movie in the 90s, which I won't spend too much time on because it's a TV question, but it is relevant. And I think just overall, it's a much stronger show than the other ones in the mix. And I have one other thing I want to say, but that's good. We'll go there.
All right. Well, there are 3 very different Westerns here, guys. Fight them out.
So as far as
well, I'd like to start real quick. Oh, come on. I'm so close. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Maverick because I appreciate the way Kim brought up the treatment of people of color in shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza, and it's very problematic. But I don't think we need to let Maverick off the hook just yet because there's another underrepresented group in that, and that's women. The Maverick boys were not specifically great with women. They're known womanizers, known cheats and gamblers. Heart of Gold, you know, that's to be argued maybe, but I think think that you would still find plenty of problematic content in your average Maverick episodes. And also, they couldn't hold on to their star. 8 episodes in, James Garner's like, how about part-time?
Yep.
Maybe I'll do a half a season.
And they kept introducing like brothers that were never mentioned before, just to replace Gardner, and the one that replaced Gardner in season 4 left, and they had to fix it by season 5 again and reintroducing a completely new character. It suffered a lot of continuity errors because the stars just didn't want to be part of it, and it just suffered because the audience connected with those characters only to get them stripped away from them. Can I touch quick on the? I get it. That pretty much the entire Western genre has a lot of problematic issues in it. Like, I can't fault an entire genre for it being built in the early 1900s. Like, it's just part
but I
of
would say Firefly finds a way to skirt some of those issues and get to talk about them by setting it in the future.
Did they skirt those issues though? Because if you take a step back and actually pull Firefly into the Western genre, instead of it just leaving it as a space Western with, oh yeah, they're cowboys on a spaceship. If you actually pull it in and look at it, you've got Confederate soldiers that moved out into the West, into the frontier. Those are our heroes. You've got Reavers as the allegory for Indians, who are literal cannibalistic savages tearing people apart. I mean, they just took all of the problematic stuff and ramped it up to 11, but then wrapped it in sci-fi and said, well, no, nobody, it's fine.
Right, but that's what sci-fi shows do. They take issues from actual life and they repackage them to give you a way to talk about them and for people to be able to grasp onto those concepts in a different way. That's what Star Trek did, and that's Firefly is just also, not only is it a brilliant Western, but is pulling what is strong about science fiction, about the allegories used in science fiction.
I just find it hard for me to sit here and hear the question that Jack asked, which is best TV Western, and for me to sit back and say, yeah, sure, the hybrid, it's fair. It falls in the category, which is it's a space opera / space Western, or whatever you want to call it. But when you think about Westerns, you don't think about spaceships. You don't think about, futuristic imagery. You think about the saloon. You think about dusty cowboy boots. You think about the horses. You think about showdowns at 12. So it's hard for me to sit back and crown Firefly, which took inspiration in the Western genre and ramped it up to sci-fi, and say, yes, that's the best TV
people watching at home, let me tell you what Yusef's doing here. He's talking about semantics on the question.
I'm not saying semantics. I'm saying it's a valid
Maverick because he doesn't want to talk about the fact that there's nothing interesting about Gunsmoke except the fact that it ran for a long time, and now it doesn't even have that anymore because The Simpsons overtook it. The only reason anybody even remembered the show Gunsmoke is because it was on, because your grandpa fell asleep in front of the TV with it on, and it got to stay on for 20 seasons because of those ratings.
Shoulders that every single Western rise upon. It's still the longest live action. It's no longer the longest.
Yeah, it lost overall, but it's still live action.
But
great, because everybody knows the best work goes from shows that go on for 20 seasons. I'm sure it stayed sharp right up to the very end. Unlike Firefly, which is a show that was written in the prime era of early television. This is the peak, like going right into the golden age of TV. This is a show that still holds up on its story and its characters. Man, shows from the 60s, that shit is unwatchable, and you know it. You go back and watch that. I dare you to get through an episode and a half.
It's so good that it barely lasted 11 out of the 13 episodes, and it hasn't come back despite all the huge
bad decisions of the TV executives aside.
It never came back. It never garnered enough popularity, like you're saying, for TV series for TV executives to actually pick it back up.
Get a chance. It's not the show's fault. It's that TV executives and the way it was issued.
We're living in an era where every single series is being brought up from the dead. And where's the Firefly, since everybody wants
their story has been told. It's done. It would be a hacky move to bring it back now. It would be hacky. They had their shot. They took their time. They have a perfectly encapsulated story now. It's time to let it be. It sits atop the pinnacle of television Westerns.
And it's not only that it lasted for 20 years. It lasted 20 years with the two main stars. meaning audiences connected with those two stars for 20 years. They saw them go up and down, see through every single trope of the Westerns.
But
revolve-
what actually did the show accomplish? Because just like soap operas that go on and on and on for episodes and episodes and episodes and episodes, nothing ever sticks. Nothing ever happens to the characters. They had the same main character for 20 seasons. He didn't, suffer any losses. He didn't drop dead. Like, he's a sheriff. They're going to get shot eventually. Their life expectancy was low.
I can ask the same question about Maverick. It didn't accomplish anything. It just a series. Those series back then are just procedurals. It's kind of like Law and Order. Sure, it's like it's the new event that the marshal has to deal with in the town, like the new outlaw or the blacksmith or there's a fight in the saloon. Somebody cheated at cards. Like all the tropes, all the things that when you close your eyes and you think about a Western, every single thing that comes to your mind happened in that series.
See,
it is a
where you make that argument. My show, actually, one of its episodes was later readapted into The Sting, which is a very well-regarded movie. It was very popular. The story was strong. That single episode story was strong enough. They were like, we could write a movie out of this, and they did, and it became The Sting. And then the show itself got adapted into a movie. It's the 7th highest box office of any Western in history in terms of cinema. So I mean, the story itself is so much richer and stronger than something like Gunsmoke, which just goes on and on and on and on and on.
Gunsmoke
it got 5 TV movies, and that was it. Never got a bigger look than that. Like, it's just, what is it actually doing?
I could go on this. This is a great opening fight. We could do this literally all day, but we do unfortunately have to start wrapping up. So I want to go back to Yusuf and get your final thoughts, please, on why yours is the best TV Western, please.
So it's not a TV series that is praised in hindsight due to its longevity. It was #1 in America during its run for 4 years in a row. It stayed within the top 30 for almost its entire run. Stars of Hollywood fell in love with. Icons like John Wayne said in the opening that he wished that he was part of, but he was happy that it was in the hands of his friend John Arness, which was the star for 20 years. And not only did it inspire spin-offs, TV movies, comic book, games from the side guys of Gunsmoke, it was one of those series that introduced and helped shape countless stars of Hollywood. Since it ran so long, it had appearances like Burt Reynolds, Charles Bronson, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy before they were in Star Trek, Betty Davis, Sam Elliott, Harrison Ford, Kurt Russell. I mean, I can go on, but I wanted to mention it also appears Richard Dreyfuss is in a couple of episodes. Since he was such a big part of my last fight, I wanted to mention him in this one too. So it's just like a staple Western that helped shape what a Western is to audiences, along with the multitude of movies that came out of that year. And it also helped shape stars of that genre.
Wonderful. Brian.
Yeah, I'm glad that Gunsmoke was popular when there were like 4 TV shows on, and it was one of them. That's awesome. Good for them. Both of these shows are just kind of like, Maverick is the kind of epitome of that like slapdash TV style of this, before we got into where we are now with serialized storytelling. It's just, here's an episode with this guy, here's an episode with this guy. It doesn't matter. You don't care enough to even follow one episode to the next. Now we replaced him with this character, whatevs. Firefly has created a devoted fan base that has kept that alive. It's a well-written show that had great characters that are memorable. It was like literally on the cusp of the golden era of television. Like, had it come out now, it would be a hit. It would have done 7 seasons and it would be a gigantic thing. I think the last thing that really stuck out to me when I was thinking about this was Firefly is like a show about world building and how, they take the tropes that you're familiar with and repackage them away so that you can enjoy them freshly in a new way. And, old Westerns are about like reality erasing and truth erasing. Like, everybody look at the heroes and, they fought off the bad Indians. And, look how awesome it is that he slapped that waitress on the butt and sent her packing. Oh, what a cool dude. And I'm just like, I'm ready to move on from that. And I think our Westerns can do better than that. All
right, Kim, close us out.
I think overall Maverick is just a much stronger show than everything else that we've talked about. Like I've said, it was a strong enough core story to get adapted in 2 major instances. It's, you know, lasted a lot longer than Firefly. It had the opportunity to really tell its full story. Firefly, like, oh, the episodes are so great, just because it didn't have time to have a bad episode because it got canceled too fast. We know Whedon's style. He would have had bad episodes in there eventually. And as far as Gunsmoke goes, the 1958 Primetime Emmy for Best TV Western nominated Gunsmoke. Winner, Maverick. So if you want to put the two shows literally side by side for which is the best TV Western, it's right there. They handed the Emmy to Maverick, not to Gunsmoke. So I think, you know, these three shows, as much as they've succeeded in what they specifically attempted to do, when you put them all three in the Western, Maverick has to come out on top.
All right, time. Well done, guys. That was a really good fight. So Randall, I'm going to go to you first. Tell me some of the facts that you heard. Everything seemed pretty clean.
Of all the facts that were thrown out, everything was clean. A lot of them I had checked beforehand, I just checked off as I went along as they were rattled off. But everything else other than that was pretty clean.
How did social react? Did you have a chance to check?
I was checking a little bit. There's a few people talking about Westworld. Let's see.
I saw Deadwood on there too.
Yeah, Deadwood was mentioned quite a few times. Bonanza. So there was a few other series that definitely could have been included and fought. A lot of good choices.
So opinion-wise, what'd you think of the first round? Did you have anybody that you're leaning towards over someone else?
Personally, after listening to all three arguments, I was more leaning towards Kim's argument. I thought that it was more well-rounded, and I liked that it was one show that kind of took a different approach to the Western style. It wasn't a straight Western like you would expect, and it did. I guess it was, for its time, it was something different.
All right. Well, thank you for your help. I guess that means it falls to me to pick a winner. I liked all three arguments in this round. I thought you guys all did a really good job. I think, you know, we have, on the one hand, we have the authentic, realistic Gunsmoke, which a lot of you guys made, especially Brian, points that, you know, now we're sort of over that, the tropes of cowboys and Indians. But to be fair to Yusef and his argument, you know, at the time that show was out, and you're right, they only did have 4 shows. But at the same time, because they only had 4 shows, it does start to knock down Gunsmoke a little bit because the competition was much lesser. With Brian's show, I think all of you pointed out how it only got 11 episodes. And yes, Brian did argue pretty well that is more because of Fox than because of the show. Kim, I thought you really highlighted how your show was lighthearted, but they really kind of hit you hard on its constant changes of cast and its lack of consistency. And for me, it started to fall back to Yusef and Brian. So it's between you two guys for me. Full disclosure, Firefly is my favorite show. So, you know, I want to remain objective here. So I am stepping back and listening heavily to the arguments. What I think at the end of the day, when I'm looking at the two arguments made, you have authentic versus this new idea. Kim talks about redressing Firefly as its problematic issues, but I really like Brian's rebuttal about, well, Star Trek's been doing that too, and it's the same kind of thing. And in the end, the thing that threw it over to one or the other was when Kim said Firefly would have had a bad episode eventually. Well, that means it didn't have a bad episode. And I kind of agree with Brian that even, you know, it was 11 strong episodes, plus it did have 16 on the DVD. You could see them all. It also spawned a movie just like Kim's did. So it was really close, but another fighter sort of helped push me over. I'm giving the point to Brian. Whew. Was there a poll, Randall, at all? I know we're trying to, we may not have anybody running polls at the moment, but, and you're muted. Randall's muted.
Yes,
there.
Sorry.
That's okay.
There was a poll. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Problem. It was a really tough fight. It was a really tough fight. In fact, Yusuf, you really started to come back there at the end too.
It looks like Maverick won with 50%.
I like that movie, by the way. The Maverick movie with Mel Gibson, even though I can't stand Mel Gibson anymore. I like that movie.
Yeah, it did really good.
Yeah, Maverick movie is pretty.
five times what Firefly did in theaters, box office wise.
The Serenity.
Oh,
Sure
Serenity
did.
bombed super hard. That's
Oh,
why
yeah.
I always laugh when they're like talking about translating TV shows and doing full length movies. It's like, I mean, I'm always up for it, but I never I'm like, you're taking a risk there. You're rolling that dice.
So, Brian, you're going to have control here of the second speed round group. You go into the lead with 2-0. You guys can definitely get back in it, though. There's plenty of time here. So we're going to start with our second group of speed rounds. Here's the questions, categories, that you can choose from. We have the Gunslinger, number one contenders, the gloves are off, or TV's best comedy. Brian is the one who gets the pick.
Yeah. Sorry, let's go with the gloves are off.
The gloves are off. All right. Drawing from TV or film, who is the MCU's greatest villain?
Thanos.
Plenty of options.
Killmonger.
Okay. Sure, Yusef is aware that there's an MCU.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just teasing. The answer, of course, henchman number 2 from Captain America, the First Avenger.
That's the guy who eats the cyanide tooth, right?
It is. It was him.
Obviously, you said MCU, and I want to say Sam Raimi's Green Goblin. MCU.
Yeah, so we're talking MCU universe. That can include all of the Netflix TV shows, the AMC Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., any of the films from the MCU universe.
Sigourney Weaver from The Defenders.
Could be an option.
Let's go Loki. I know there. Loki, yeah, sure.
Loki. All right, so Brian has Thanos. You're going to lead us off. Give me one moment here, because every time I start talking, my clock goes off. Okay, there we go. Time starts, Brian, when you're ready with Thanos.
Thanos is the product of lessons learned from the MCU. He's a character that got the benefit of having his whole movie focused on him and getting a true backstory and getting to emote. And it cannot be undersold how good Josh Brolin's performance is and how much they worked to get the very specific facial movements. I mean, he does a lot of emoting through that big purple head, and it works. They really captured the performance, and that can't be taken away. The difficulty of getting something like that right. But you get to see actual pathos and pain.
Killmonger from Kim, whenever you're ready.
So what makes Killmonger such a fantastic villain is the way that he forms a mirror image to Black Panther. Him and T'Challa, their views on the world and how Wakanda should evolve and move forward are so distinct from each other, and yet they're aligned in specific ways that just create so much friction between them. And that's what makes him such a really strong villain, is the fact that he can foil off of the main character. It's not just a huge big bad that's overwhelming and destructive. It's not, tropey brother revenge.
Yusuf with Loki.
Loki, for many years in a row, he was the go-to villain for the MCU because he was the best villain. He brought all the Avengers together to fight in the first movie. He's funny, he's powerful, and he's always that type of villain that you want to like just based on his personality. And his relationship with Thor has evolved throughout the entire movies that they've been together. So
I have a few more moments, but I'm going to give you the whole time.
Ping!
All right. Brian, you have 15 seconds to rebut.
I think everybody really loves Loki, but he's always been more of an anti-hero than a villain. Even in the Avengers, when he brings them together, he's really at the behest of a greater power, and he has doubts even in that film about being bad. Killmonger is a great portrayal and a great villain, but he suffers again from rushing.
Kim. Killmonger rebuttal.
So Thanos is just an unstoppable force. There's not a lot of depth there. You said he had a backstory, but all they do is show that one scene with Gamora being little, and that was his whole backstory. You know, oh, the planet died. Like there was very little there, and Loki. The only reason I wanted to finish that
up on you quick. Yusuf, you get the final word whenever you're ready.
Thanos is just an overpowered villain with a glove that can snap away anybody. Killmonger learned of the lessons of Loki, which is creating a tragic backstory and empathizing with that hero and that villain and understanding his motivations behind his dark actions.
Time. I feel like I know who won this one, but I want to go to Randall first to get your impressions. What do you think of the fight, Randall?
I thought it was pretty even fight all around. They kind of all took digs at each other evenly. But the one argument that probably stuck out to me the most was Yusuf's. I do like that he did bring up that Loki's kind of like the prototype that they used in terms of how they built the rest of the villains throughout the MCU.
So your vote is for Yusuf. I hear what you're saying. I did go a different way, however. For me, I think everybody's rebuttal sort of cancels each other out. Brian took one shot at someone, didn't have time enough for the next one. Then same thing happens to Kim, but you all sort of took each other out. So for me, it largely fell upon what your initial arguments did to decide the winner for me. And while I heard a lot about Brolin's performance as Thanos and how Loki brought the Avengers together, Kim explained how Killmonger's relationship with her counterpart protagonist in Black Panther, how that dichotomy worked, and explained to me more about why he was the villain in that moment than you guys did for your other ones. So for me, Kim was the winner of this round. Good job, Kim.
Oh yeah, real talk. I would have given it to Kim too.
Yeah, Kim had a great argument that round. I was really impressed. Okay, so that means Kim, you are in control of round 2. Dun, 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 dun. That's the control of round 2 music. Who would you like to go first, second, and third?
I'll go first. Okay. I'll have Brian go second, and then Yusuf go third.
You got it. Okay, so this is a pitch round that we're about to do. I just want to remind our guys to keep it focused. We don't want the round to go for 30 minutes, but I will give you a little extra time because we are pitching. So try to get right to the point. Here we go. No Sams. I'm looking at you, Sam. Okay. Ready for round 2. What TV show no longer on the air deserves to return as a 2-hour movie and then pitch it? So we're going to start with Kim.
Okay, do you want me to just give my answer or give a little bit of a
Give your answer and give a brief synopsis of what's going to happen in that movie.
Okay, so I chose Sliders, which, if you're not familiar with it, it was a sci-fi TV show about a group of people who slide from one parallel universe to another. It's sort of the epitome of a bottle television show. Every world was distinct from the one before it. And so what I'm pitching for my movie is that all of that tunneling from parallel universe to parallel universe has slowly poked holes in the multiverse. It's all started to spring a leak. And these worlds are starting to bleed into each other and crash into each other. And they have to try to find a way to fix the damage that they've done through all of their travels as they've tried to get back to their original prime Earth across the different seasons. They've wrecked worlds. They've made worlds better throughout the series. And now all of that's coming to a head as all of these worlds are sort of crashing together. And they have to try to find a way to, patch the leaks and get things back onto an even keel, as well as not trap themselves so they can actually get home like their original plan was.
And I have one quick follow-up question. Is it the same cast from the TV series that's going to be returning, or would you recast it?
I would bring back some of the key cast. Some of them, like the cast changed over the course of some of the seasons, and some of them aren't necessarily around anymore to keep working. But like John Rhys Davis, who's well known for being Gimli in Lord of the Rings, he would definitely be coming back. The 2 of the 3 Quins would definitely be coming back. Like some of the core people definitely would be, but you drop off some of the fringe cast that got swapped in the later seasons.
Wonderful. Brian, which one did you pick?
Oh, this one for me was easy just because I'm in love with the show Hannibal. it was a Brian Fuller who's gone on to continue to create great work, but he took his, something that was already a beloved adaptation. He went to Thomas Harris's books, he readapted them. He created an amazing show. Unfortunately, only got 3 seasons, not so much because it wasn't critically acclaimed, which it was, and it was also popular, but it was also very, very expensive to produce. But that's why a movie budget would serve this series so well. And the most iconic work of Thomas Harris that they didn't get to adapt was Silence of the Lambs. And I would love to see the cast of Hannibal and the production team of Hannibal get to take on Silence of the Lambs. Now, obviously, that's an iconic piece of work already, but I think that Hannibal has already proven they kind of like already got over the reboot hump as far as I'm concerned. They're popular in spite of that already. So I think the fans and even new audiences would be more willing to accept a new version of Silence of the Lambs. You could do a story, an investigative story like that, and there's enough things to change. You already have the strong cast of Hannibal, including Mads Mikkelsen and Lawrence Fishburne as Jack Crawford. I was looking at recasting Clarice Starling. I thought somebody who had kind of the youth and naivete, but also could stand on her own up against Mads Mikkelsen and be an interesting character was Laura Harrier. She was just in Black Klansman, but also you might know her as Liz from Spider-Man Homecoming. You might think she's young, but she's like 27. She just is that classic thing where she can play a high schooler still, but she's perfectly of age to play a cadet in the FBI. And then I also thought this is not just a pitch for people from Black Klansman, but I thought you could recast Buffalo Bill as Adam Driver, and I think that would be a brilliant choice for him. He's shown he can be vulnerable, but also intense and scary. So I guess that's my pitch for now, and I'll go ahead and let Yusuf talk a little bit.
Thank you much. Yusuf, tell us what you picked.
So the series I picked was Constantine. Despite having a positive reception, it was canceled after the first season. I think this character is underutilized. He can serve as a doorway for the weirder characters and storylines that DC has. Constantine is a perfect vehicle for the audiences. If you look at the box office in past decades, there's a clear trend. Audiences like to watch horror movies and comic book movies. So this is like the perfect blend of a comic book movie and a horror movie. Technically, Constantine had already a movie made, but outside of him having a suit and having the name Constantine, there's nothing really that much that tied it to the comic books. Constantine is a con man and a street magician, always looking out for himself. And he fell ass backwards into the world of the occult. Keanu Reeves' movie felt like an Exorcist movie and an Antichrist movie, Heaven and Hell Battle, which we've seen multiple times. So I want to take him in a completely different direction. And I want to take a storyline from the comic books, which is actually the search for Swamp Thing. The story encompasses everything that is great about Constantine world. We get to see all the characters that reluctantly help him because he has shown more than once that he's selfish and he's always in it for himself. So people around him, despite that they are willing to help him and they're willing to go along with him along the ride, they know that he is a selfish person. So we can introduce Satana, Deadman. We can introduce Madame Xanadu. We can introduce Andrew Bennett, which is a vampire, and we can obviously we can introduce the Swamp Thing. So the story, like the quick pitch is, it's Constantine trying to find and stop Swamp Thing because there's a string of murders that clearly he's the one that doing him. The Swamp Thing connects with Constantine through their psychic connection and infects Constantine. So he has a personal motivation because his body is turning slowly into Swamp Thing, and we could get a good body horror influences there too, because his body is slowly betraying him and continuing to become Swamp Thing. And he just recruits people along the way to try to find Swamp Thing. And in the end, they figure out that he's being controlled by Kranos, which is part of the Yun-Men, which is a big villain group for the Dark Justice League. And it's almost a doorway also to potentially having the Dark Justice League introduced into the pantheon of DC.
Awesome. All right, I want to get everybody a chance to fight here, so battle it out, guys. Take down some pitches.
I think it says a lot. You know, as we've had this big summer, everyone's complains about too many reboots and too many adaptations and too many of this and too many of that. We've had a summer with a lot of unique movies getting made, and you guys are pitching movies based on TV shows, based on movies, based on books. Like, how many degrees of going in a circle do you need to go before the stories have been told and they don't need to be told again? You know, with Sliders, you're taking a show that's had a chance to rest a bit, you know, and now it can have a resurge with all the advances in CGI technology. The tunneling can look a lot nicer. The worlds blending together can look fantastic graphically. And the story, there's room to really tell something significant in a sci-fi world with this. You know, we've had so many of these stories already. You're going to retell. You mentioned Silence of the Lambs. You're going to reboot Silence of the Lambs. Like, that's going to work well. And, you know, do we need more DCU universe?
They've already, but that's the thing. They already rebooted it, and it did work well. We just want to see that story taken from this adaptation. Like, the fans of this, and are out there, and I think, and he said 2-hour movie. We didn't even say it has to be a theatrical release. This could be a Netflix movie. You could bring back Mads Mikkelsen and Lawrence Fishburne, and you could put this anywhere, and that would get traction. The fans would be thrilled with it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need a box office success to be a great thing, and to be what fans want and what they appreciate. You know, I think Sliders was fine. It wasn't even like an A-list show when it was out. I mean, if you were going to reboot a universe jumping television show, wouldn't you just do Quantum Leap? It's a much better show. It's got you know, Scott Bakula is a much more beloved character than Jerry. Nobody's like dying. Oh, where's the guy from Piranha 3D? Oh, I haven't seen Jerry O'Connell. Nobody cares about him. Mads Mikkelsen's a legit movie star now.
I care about my follower, Jerry O'Connell. Thank you very much.
So the issue that I have with Hannibal, while I'm a huge fan of that TV series because it is beautifully shot and beautifully acted, is that I always envision it, and the way that they treated it is like it's leading up to the movies that are in the pantheon of Hannibal. Like, it's the relationship between Will and Dr. Hannibal, and how he manipulated him throughout all his career. Right.
But in the third season, we get
it leads
an adaptation.
It leads up to Red Dragon, and then that leads up to Silence of the Lambs. So
but that's what I'm saying. They did adapt Red Dragon in the third season of Hannibal, and that's what showed that they can take something that exists. In fact, something that exists twice. If you're a fan of Manhunter, which I am, great movie, underrated. But they show that they can still have a spin on that, and their casting, their writers, and their genre piece has a place.
The reason why I'm saying that it feels weird that you want to jump is that the seasons are very built around the relationship between Will and him. So you just want
that story was told. That's what I'm saying, and that's the same thing about Silence of the Lambs.
A completely shift of the story and the motive of the series, which was actually building how manipulative he was with Will. That was kind of like my selling point, like seeing him.
But having something new to talk about and having a new relationship is a good reason to bring something back. That's not a detriment. Having something else to say with these characters and having somewhere else to take the story is a positive.
Award-winning movie. It was so well done in that movie that I just find it as a detriment to the actors and to the actual writers having to live under that huge shadow that you want to cast over them.
I think we're over that. I think reboots just exists, and if they're good, they're good, and people like them, and if they're bad, they ignore them. I feel like this whole thing of like treasuring these things of the past, they still exist. Silence of the Lambs isn't going anywhere. Pop it in and watch it, enjoy it. But other people can maybe like this. Maybe there's a new set of fans who can't get into that version, but would love this.
So just because I can't hear Yusuf, I want to finish your point, Yusuf, so I can hear what you said.
Sorry, I just feel like I would have been more on board with Brian's if it was either a continuation of that relationship or taking it a completely different route instead of trying to do Silence of the Lambs again. Like, I just don't like that. I like that he picked Hannibal. When I saw that he picked Hannibal, I was like, oh shit, he picked Hannibal. But rebooting Silence of the Lambs, it just feels like it's been done, and it's been done such a perfect way that it's just going to be always in the shadow of Silence of the Lambs.
So Kim, let's start us off with some final thoughts here. Why is your the best pitch here and the best movie that's your return?
I think there's just a lot to say and do within this universe. You know, we've had sci-fi movies as of late and TV shows play with time. You look at Westworld with the multiple timelines and the jumping around and rearranging of things, but multiple dimensions isn't really being utilized as much anymore as a sci-fi trope, or as like a section of sci-fi. And I think that's fertile ground to really dig something up and tell a powerful story that can really hit people in a way that they haven't experienced in a long time. And I think that the fact that they've had so many strong bottle episodes, you know, there was the one where the U.S. lost a civil war, the one where the U.S. lost a revolutionary war, the one where a virus decimated the male population, all these different smaller stories that when you start having those worlds and the impact that the sliders had on them as they move through them start bleeding into each other and smashing into each other. The one where dinosaurs are still alive and San Francisco is a nature preserve. You have a T-Rex in a regular San Francisco downtown, that's going to cause some waves. There's a lot of room for tension, some good action set pieces, and you can tell a really strong sci-fi story across these multiple universes or parallel universes smashing together. And I think it's just a lot stronger than anything that you're going to get rehashing stuff over and over and over again from the other two pitches.
Brian.
I don't think anybody's attacked Yusef yet, and I think that's because nobody cares about Constantine. They couldn't even keep their show on the air on a channel that is almost specifically completely made up of superhero shows. It's just there's so much supernatural content out there that like just adding the DC logo at the beginning didn't do anything for anyone. It's like, yeah, another exorcism show, another fight demon show, whatever. You know, he works better as a side character who you bring in for a couple funny quips. I think the Keanu movie was really good, and I think that serves as to like show us that even well done version, oh no, he didn't have a British accent. But aside from that, that's a solid movie. And it showed that people just aren't interested in that sort of thing. It's not, you would have better luck adding Keanu to the current DCEU than you would trying to build this dark Justice League around a character that couldn't even sustain a CW show, and literally anything can sustain. Like, they pump out a new superhero show, 2-3 of those a year, and they're all still on. Every one of them. It's ridiculous. And as far as Sliders go, I was a fan of Sliders, but that show wasn't good. The best you could hope for with a Sliders movie would be something akin to like Serenity, as well as it did. And I'm not saying that popularity is the whole thing and that like success is everything about it, but I'm just saying that like there's actually a fan base that would be interested in this Hannibal thing. You would be hard pressed to find few and far between these Sliders fans who would breathe life into this thing. I knew that the reboot thing would be a point of contention. I tried to address it. There's some people who are just never going to like reboots. I am a person who loves the Anthony Hopkins adaptations. I think Red Dragon is nearly on par, and that's a damn what's his name, Brett Ratner movie, and I still think it's good. But I think Hannibal showed they can go into that world, they can have their own voice. They have an amazing cast of characters. I think you could add some even more interesting dynamics with some of the actors I mentioned. And I just think it's a really amazing piece of art that deserves one last go.
All right, and Yusuf.
First note of contention, it was on NBC, and NBC is popular for canceling anything that is not pitch perfect according to them. So it wasn't CW, just, you know, FYI. I agree.
Then why didn't CW pick that up?
Well, I let him have his thing.
Thank you. It did pick him up because they did bring in his character from time to time throughout the CW episode. So yes, thank you, Brian, for bringing that up. So first, Sliders, I agree. It's such a small IP that I don't know if it warrants that trouble of bringing it back to life, like buying it from the creators or bringing in the creators to actually revive that that series into a movie. I think it works perfectly as a procedural, or not a procedural, but like a chapter based, in where you can actually get to know the characters and really live in that moment. A movie would just feel contained and trying to rush everything that would have been expanded throughout a season. Hannibal, I already said my piece with it, but the reason why I picked Constantine is not because he's the leading man. It's because he's a perfect doorway into great comic book characters, such as Swamp Thing, that people have a deep passion for, because Neil Gaiman gave life into something that sounds so ridiculous but is so well done in the comics. So you're not having Constantine as that leading man that nobody cares about, like you're saying. He is the audience vehicle into this world of just occult and demons and craziness and vampires and stuff that are underserved in comic books. Like the comic books are playing it safe to a certain extent, which is just normal humans that have a power, and then they just, like, the craziest we've gotten is Doctor Strange, and even that turned into them punching. And I just feel like there's a huge market right now for horror and comic book movies, and Constantine is the perfect vehicle for that.
All right, time. Well done, guys. This is going to be really tough. Randall, I hate to do this to you. First, we'll start with facts. Were there facts? It's a pitch round, but there's definitely some things thrown around.
Well, other than the of course, Constantine being on NBC instead of CW, I couldn't really. It was pretty opinionated mostly in terms of what they wanted the most out of these shows becoming movies.
Mm-hmm.
So there weren't too many facts. I guess in terms of like who I would think, you want to know like who I would pick in terms of the argument.
Yep.
I honestly thought that Brian had the strongest argument for why his show should like be continued. And mostly because he had a good knock against Constantine. Like it could have been picked up, but they still haven't, and I think it might be just because of market or just thing. And same with Sliders, like it being an older IP, it might not have that same pull now as if they may have done it say 10 years ago. Whereas this Hannibal like show does currently have a good fan base, and I could see it working based on the things that were brought up and how this was argued.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. While I think of these, check with social, and then I'll come back to you, and we'll look at some of what people picked at home. This is a really tough round. I have a lot of notes. Wow, there's a lot of notes here. So Kim's picking Sliders. I'm very familiar with that show. I love Sliders too. I watched every episode. I was really into that show. Hannibal, same thing. I really like Hannibal. I think everybody sort of came after you for redoing Silence of the Lambs, which makes sense. Yusuf, when you were giving me your pitch, the biggest concern I had was that it seems like more of a Swamp Thing show than a Constantine show, because you really pushed the Swamp Thing angle. I kind of agreed with Brian a little bit on the Keanu Reeves version was actually pretty good. But you had a lot of the hits against Silence of the Lambs. All of you guys pretty much said that just Sliders is an old IP. But when I listened to the three pitches, I think Kim's had the most original story, and I think that it also had the most thought out process. She mentions how the technology update would serve the show better, because I understand exactly what she's talking about with Tunnel. So that would look better. And I think that the Silence of the Lambs thing specifically, like I really liked how Brian pointed out that it could be a TV movie on Netflix instead. Like that was a really great angle. It's why for me, it was really falling between Kim and Brian. But I think at the end of the day, the only thing you guys really had bad to say about Sliders was that it was Sliders, and that would people know Sliders. But I thought that as a pitch, her pitch made the most sense, because I think redoing Silence of the Lambs, even with a new cast, too many people remember Silence of the Lambs. It's super close, but Kim, you get the point. Well done. Whew. Oh my God. That
Netflix point kind of works for Sliders too. Like you could do a Sliders movie on Netflix, same thing. So, I was kind of like, I'm glad nobody said that until now, because that would have totally like just undercut the shit out of me.
I definitely wrote that down, because I thought that was a really great point. I mean, it's so iconic. I mean, Kevin James as Buffalo Bill. Come on, man. It was the best role. That's a different reality. We slid to a different universe there for a moment. Okay, guys. So we are tied. Kim has 2. Brian has 2. Yusuf not out of it, because we have another speed round and you get to pick it. So let's go back to the questions. The ones we have remaining. The Gunslinger, #1 contenders, or TV's best comedy?
#1 contenders.
#1 contenders. No one bit on TV's best comedy. Very disappointed. I worked really hard on that question.
There's too many choices.
Just saying. But anyway, okay. So number one contenders is the question. Here we go. Oh, let me grab my paper and my timer. I could do this all at once and then feel like I really have command of my own show. That would be great. Okay. Number one contenders. What is the best sports movie to feature a championship match?
Rocky.
Who said that? That was Kim?
Me.
No, that was Yusef.
Yusuf. Sorry. What is the best sports movie to feature a championship match? Plenty of options. I looked them up on the internet, but that was before the show and in order to prepare. Oh, while you guys are, well, I'll wait till afterwards. I want to get the social from the last round. I forgot, but we'll do it afterwards.
Miracle.
Miracle by Brian. Okay.
Mighty Ducks 2. Just because I can't remember if the end of Mighty Ducks 1 was a championship match or not.
Got it. Mighty Ducks 2.
Hey, you didn't specify the scale of the championship, you know.
I did not. It's any championship, so that's perfectly fine. Real quick before we do the speed round, what were some of the options, Randall, that we had from the previous round? I kind of jumped right in. I was just curious what the people at home were thinking.
Let's see. We had some people had even brought up Deadwood again, that they wanted a conclusion. Let's see, especially David Bowman. We saw Kimber had brought up The Office.
The British version or the American version?
The American version. Maybe. I'm assuming based on the gift that was added. Eric Ossenbacher had also brought up Freaks and Geeks. That'd be pretty cool to see.
There's still a lot of love for that show.
Yeah, plus a nice reunion, like later in years, like them, like a high school reunion would be kind of cool.
Bring back my so-called life, you cowards.
Claire Danes is still around. All right, guys. So let's get into this fight. So once again, what is the best sports movie to feature a championship? Yusuf, you're going to go first with Rocky. Whenever you are ready, sir, go for it.
So Rocky is the single most important underdog story to be told, meaning he is completely an underdog in life and in the actual sport, and he just rewrites the entire history for himself. And it also goes against the sports tropes. He actually didn't win the championship match in the end, but he won like his life back. He fell in love. He has his training partners, and his life is back in order thanks to his training and his fight.
Time. Brian with Miracle.
Yusuf said the best underdog story, but this is a true underdog story. The Miracle on Ice, when the homegrown American team went up against those big nasty Russians and won the Olympic gold. This is an amazing, like I said, true story that actually happened. Kurt Russell in one of his most underrated roles and most underrated wigs. And I just think that this is just a really heartfelt and amazing story. There's a lot of great character tropes here. You get the team is filled with that kind of like, oh, sorry.
I actually looked away for a moment. I was listening and I was like, oh, wait, that's 30 seconds. Kim, Mighty Ducks 2. Whenever you're ready.
So Mighty Ducks 2 took what worked from the first movie and stepped it up a level. Right now they're in the Junior Olympic Championships. They're competing on an international level. They have to try to integrate new players to the traditional Ducks team from all over the country, right? They all got their quirky personalities, and they have to try to make them fit within the team and become part of the family and work in order to succeed and triumph as a team. And, you know, we'll get back to it back and forth, but it's just such a really strong story. There's some lighthearted comedy in there. It's kids, you know, triumphing over the big bad Iceland team, just like the big bad Russians.
Yusuf.
Rocky is also based on a true story. It takes from inspiration from Rocky. It won the Academy Best Picture. It has also mirrored Sylvester Stallone's life. He was down on his luck, and this movie brought him back to life and gave him everything that he's had, and he's going forward.
Time. Brian.
both of your picks are pieces of the puzzle, and Miracle is the complete show. You have the beautiful underdog story. You have the actual quirky cast of characters going up against the insurmountable odds, except it has the resonance of a true story that people can get behind, that they can remember, that grandfathers can share with grandsons. And that's the kind of thing.
Time. Kim, final word.
The problem with Miracle is that based on a true story, they take liberties. There's always tweaks and twists and things that it's not the story. It's the story-ish. And as far as Rocky goes, Rocky 4 is much better than Rocky. It just knocks it out of the park. If you're going to pick a boxing movie, you got to go with the real best Rocky movie. And you just, D2 knocks both of those out of the park.
Oof. All right. Randall, do you want to weigh in?
Honestly, no.
I didn't say that, but I'm going to force you to anyway. It's part of the role. What would you like to pick for this round? Who did you like?
And
there are no wrong answers, unless you're me, and then you hear about it on Twitter.
But I will remember this.
Yes, I will never forget.
Yeah, I honestly was leaning towards Brian. With his opening remarks, like he came out really strong, but I would probably honestly give it to Kim, like with her, like just the way she reacted and rebutted with everyone. Like it was a really strong closing. I thought she put really two big knocks on both movies. But honestly,
it's tough. This is a really close one. I think. Okay, so I really liked Yusuf's opening. I thought it was super strong. Really set the tone for the movie. Mighty Ducks, quirky characters, also in a championship. I think it was a good follow-up to what Brian had done, though, with Miracle, like the way he described it. And then I felt that, like, I felt a lot with Kim's argument. For me, it was a lot of like, oh, well, my movie has that too. Between Miracle and Mighty Ducks, oh, mine sort of, has this, and same thing with the true story. Like Yusuf's like, oh, well, mine has a true story basing too. Boy, this is tough. I really think that it's going to come down to how well it was argued, and I think for rounds, Brian had the strongest beginning and closing of both of you, and I think he made the best points. I think Rocky 2 might have been a better pick over Rocky 4 because Rocky 2 actually has a championship and Rocky 4 does not. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I got to give it to Brian. I thought the argument was just a little bit stronger for Brian. So Brian, you get the point. And that means Brian has 3 points. Kim has 2 points. Yusuf, you are out of winning today, but you are not out of being spoiler. So here's the deal. Kim, you need this round to win. Brian, you need to not lose. So if Yusuf wins the point,
damn, my weak point, my Achilles heel, not losing.
So so here's what we need. Kim, you have to win this round to win the game. So this is a very important round for you. But Brian, you get to choose the order. So what's it going to be?
I regret our pre-fight chit-chat.
Yes,
go first.
Who's gone first? I'm sorry.
I'm going to force Kim to go first.
Okay. And then who's going second?
Let's let Yusuf go second, and I'll go last. I haven't gone last yet.
All right. No one should feel ashamed of their performances so far today. Yusuf, you've been doing a great job, dude. Let's get some points for you. Round 3 is
or not.
Well, we'll see what happens. It's still fair.
Hey, don't be torpedoing yourself.
I remain
wait a minute, what's happening here?
I remain impartial. I was trying to lift you up, Yusuf, and keeping it in the fight. That's all. All right, round 3. The mystery round character fight. First, I made everyone choose a TV character from any show ever. So first, we're going to go down the list and get what your characters were. So Kim, what did you choose?
I chose Duncan MacLeod from Highlander, the TV series.
He is of the clan MacLeod. Yusuf, who'd you pick?
I picked Data from Star Trek Next Generation.
And Brian?
I picked Detective Andy Sipowicz from NYPD Blue.
All right. So here's what you don't know at home. They were given the question, give me a TV character from any TV show ever. but they did not have any clue what the question was going to be, nor do they know what the other people picked once the question was revealed. So I gave them the question on Thursday, and the question is, what is the best movie from a universe your character is not already a part of that your character could seamlessly join? And this is a best movie question. So one of the things I just want to point out is that Data can't join Star Trek Generations. He's already in the Star Trek universe. He can't join the Star Trek the movie. He's already in that universe. Duncan MacLeod can't join the Highlander movies because that's his universe. So you have to join something else. So Kim, whenever you are ready, I would like to know what movie.
Call back tomorrow?
No, I'm sorry. This is it. I would like to know what movie is Duncan joining. You have to pick one.
I'm going to have Duncan MacLeod join Age of Adeline.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about it.
Age of Adeline is a story about a woman who, decades ago in San Francisco, that's a recurring trend apparently for me this time, has a car wreck. She lands in a lake. Lake gets struck by lightning, and it freezes her body's aging process. So she no longer ages. And I think Duncan MacLeod fits really, really strongly into this movie. Like it's a romance drama kind of movie about her going through, all this period of time and finding people and losing loved ones and all this other kind of stuff. And I think he fits really well into it as an immortal because the two of them can not age together through time. Like they can interact throughout the different decades and come together and come apart. And he can be sort of an anchor for her through those periods of time where she's in relationships and then she loses people. She has to distance herself from her kids because the government catches wind that she's not aging and they come after her. And there's all these things where he, as an immortal who's already lived for several centuries, can sort of be a grounding force for her and help lift her up into like a fully kind of embracing this immortality and making the most of it in ways that without him in the movies, she doesn't really. She just kind of casually floats by behind the scenes, not really. But with him, he can really step her up and show her what immortality can really give you if you embrace it and make the most of it.
Wonderful pick. Yusuf, what movie did Data join?
So Data is, for those who don't know, he's the lieutenant commander. He's an android. He has physical and mental capabilities were far superior than any other organic or cyber humanoid in the galaxy. He's highly resistant to conditions such as disease, radiation, oxygen deprivation, mind control, chemical imbalances. But above all, he's a synthetic android trying to understand the human experience and human emotions, leading him to having a emotion chip installed. So obviously, the movie that I chose is Eat, Pray, and Love. And what better way to understand the human condition than by eating, by finding religion, and by falling in love? And that's my pick.
Awesome. Love it. Brian, you're closing it out. What'd you pick for your movie for Andy?
So the movie I picked for Andy to be seamlessly dropped into is Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. The reason that I think Andy Sipowicz would fit perfectly into The Dark Knight, and more so even the whole trilogy, but let's focus. There's one thing that's missing from those movies, and I believe that is the Harvey Bullock style character from the comics and the cartoon, a police officer who is at odds with Batman, who doesn't appreciate his, we get like there's people who say that in the Nolan movies, but this would be a character who is specifically after Batman and trying to bring him down, especially when we're dealing with the death of Gordon in Dark Knight. He would be investigating Batman. He would be leading the task force. And then that would roll into The Dark Knight Rises, where we would see him as this like conspiracy madman trying to piece together the Batman to find him and bring him to justice for his crimes against the city of Gotham and against Harvey Dent and the murder of Harvey Dent, which he had pinned on him. But I think specifically that's one thing from the comics. Everybody talks about how great the Nolan Batman movies are, and that's the one little thing I would add that they don't get to is his kind of like adversarial relationship with the police force.
Awesome. These are great picks. Good luck. Fight it out.
I get where you're going, Brian, with trying to have him in the Dark Knight, but I think that desire for the adversarial police force is good, but he's the wrong cop to do it, because you're gonna take an alcoholic, racist, homophobic cop and drop him in and have him get at odds with Batman. Like, that's something that, like, oh yeah, no, I totally see his point of view in between all the drinking.
But that's what I'm
like,
but I mean, that's part of it too. Batman's already the hero of our story, so a person at odds with him is going to be antagonist. But also Andy grows in that character, though, and that's part of it. Like
having the antagonist cop be someone that you can see his point of view is what you want. It makes that adversarial much stronger. If he's an asshole cop that nobody likes anyway, then they just disregard the fact that he's anti-Batman. If he's a good, upstanding cop that you relate to, when he goes against Batman, you stop and go, well, I mean, this is a good guy. Why isn't he on Batman's side? Why doesn't he see where Batman's coming from? That strengthens that so much more than just throwing like a throwaway dirtbag cop and just hoping that adversarial.
But for me, it's like the villains. It's like the same thing with the villains. You want to see the struggle that you see. You know, you want to see your antagonist struggle the way Batman struggles with what's right. And Andy was that character. Yes, I 100%. He was an asshole. He was a racist. He was a alcoholic. But he grows and he learns, and that's part of it. And part of becoming a better person. And as he chases down the Bat and he has his kind of misconceptions broken down about the Batman, he could also become a better person.
Yeah, but
I think with Duncan MacLeod,
hang on, Yusuf, go ahead.
What you're pitching is a redirection of the entire Dark Knight. That movie is already 2 hours plus long, and it has so many stuff going on inside of it. And now I have to care about a story arc about a cop in the ground that doesn't add anything
was to put my character in the best movie, not to edit it and not to make it watchable. That's not my job. That's Nolan's job as a filmmaker.
It's supposed to be seamless, though.
Yeah,
the character will seamlessly fit in with a master behind the camera.
Sure, but you're redirecting the entire. So we no longer care about the Joker. We no longer care about Batman. Let's see if this racist, homophobic cop comes to the side of Batman. Is that your pitch? I don't care if he agrees with Batman's point of view, or I don't care if he's at odds. At times, the cops are just the only one that we care about is Gordon, and he's barely in the movie also.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This would flesh out the Gordon character as well and give him a system of people who care about him and are interested in him. And are they for the right reasons? What are their, let's move on. I want to talk just a second about Duncan MacLeod. Can I real quick I understand where you were going with that, but I feel like putting another ageless character into that movie totally undermines what is going on with her character in that movie. You've now made it so it's not something special, and she doesn't have something it's not something she has to grow and learn and deal with. It's something she has a guide for now. So it kind of takes all the agency away from her character, and I just don't see how that is like a benefit to the movie.
No, because finding him partway along the way, after she's already gone through her accident and had to figure out on her own that come to that realization that she's not aging, and had to take those initial steps on her own to, okay, what do I do with this? How do I handle this? How do I protect myself? To then find him along her journey and have him as, he's a grounding force for her.
But then she has someone. She doesn't have to deal with her loss constantly and being like alone in this world. She can just go on about her life knowing there'll always be somebody there for her. She actually has more stability than the rest of us have. We have, we can't hold on to the people in our life with that kind of regularity, knowing that they're ageless and timeless and unkillable, except by a special, another special person who comes in. That's I'd love to have that guarantee about my loved ones, to be quite honest with you.
The thing is that he's not a constant presence for her. They come together in their journeys. He helps ground her down and point her in the right direction, and then they separate back out again.
But he's always going to be out there in that world for her when she needs him. or when the story needs him.
Right, but also so are other immortals who might mistake her for one of their kind instead of just someone who has a different form of agelessness. And so it introduces the opportunity for, you know, a different kind of tension while still maintaining that core of her journey through life over the decades. You know, she makes friends with a blind woman, so no matter how old she doesn't get, her friend will never notice. And like those kinds of tricks that she picks up along the way in order to try to have a fulfilling life without having to sacrifice everything along the way, every step of the way, every 10 years, every 15 years, somebody notices she's got to disappear, change her identity, this, that, and the other thing. And just having that kind of like a compass.
But her dealing with that is kind of the core of her story, right? Aren't we taking that away from her? Like, isn't that her like coming to terms with what she is and how she's different and learning to deal with that and coming up with those strategies? Aren't we kind of like taking that agency away from her by giving her this kind of like thing she can always fall back on? It might not be constant, but it's out there. It's available to her.
No, it's like establishing true north with a compass. You're still orienteering yourself. You're still guiding yourself on your journey through the world, but you still have that ability to go, okay, this way is north. When you need to right the ship, you have the opportunity to orient yourself properly by that example that he set for her, and then she can continue her journey as she sees appropriate, maintaining her agency, but knowing that she's not completely blind feeling around in the darkness. She has that guiding star that she can look to when she needs an example or needs something, not that she's constantly, oh my God, I'm helpless. It's that it's there as an assistance, as an equal, someone who can share the burden that she has to carry as an ageless person.
Let me interject here, guys, real quick. I want to make sure, Yusuf, we get a chance to hear more about yours. Actually, tell us more about Eat, Pray, Love and how it's going to be combined with Data.
So the fact that nobody has attacked my movie is because it's clearly the best choice out of these three. Because in Eat, Pray, and Love, we see that Julia Roberts, which would be Data in my movie, she's unhappy with the world.
You can't swap the character out.
Yeah,
that's not seamless.
Character. That wasn't a rule.
You have to seamlessly incorporate. So they have to be part of your movie.
Part of my movie?
Yes.
All right. He is the one that falls in love with her in India. So Star Trek, they are jumping around time and space. So he's just gonna be in India trying to understand religion and understand the human condition. And Julia Roberts just comes along and they fall in love for the very first time. It's her true love. She hasn't felt love like she felt before. And Data, trying to understand what is the human condition, knows that the only way and the only emotion that will actually open the doorway into what is humanity is love. And Julia Roberts provides that for him.
Okay, now, guys, you can hit that a little bit if you'd like, because I want to hear more about your arguments against.
I just don't understand what value Data actually adds to the story. Like, it gives him the opportunity to learn what love is, but does that,
which is something they really kind of already cover in TNG. That's like through the show and through his movies, like learning emotion is Data's whole thing. That's kind of
they're saying that their cop is going to learn to be a better person. They already covered that in your series. So why are you attacking me that they covered in the series when you're saying that he's going to have the same arc?
I don't think they did cover it in my series. That's what I'm saying. I think it's missing from my series. But I think Data is the other one. I think Data was. I think when you had to pick a character based on how you described him, I think you picked a safe character, somebody who's utilitarian. So no matter what the question was, you would have a way to get him in there. So it's kind of a boring choice to me. And like I said, I just feel like that's a thing that they covered in the show. They covered in the show. They like Data's emotional arc is what they get into,
and
that's the whole thing.
Your premise was that the eating, the praying, and the love were going to, evolve him, but he already does eat. That's an established thing. That's not a new experience for him. That's something that he already experiences.
He's experiencing. Everybody eats. Julia Roberts was eating before she left in that trip. It's eating new foods. It's experimenting with new cultures.
Which he already did in abundance. There's no growth arc for him there. He has a full a compendium of knowledge when it comes to everything, including religion. So he knows them all inside and out. He knows what faith is. He knows what they represent. There's like you're incorporating him into a movie where he has no room to grow as a
And how
person,
is
let
he-
alone
and
as
how is
like a character.
How is Highlander growing in your movie then? Because you're focusing on Madeline on Blake character. Why are you attacking my character in that he's already had growth and whatever the case may be? When
You
you're
focused
just
on him.
having
You said he was going to
relation-
grow.
Yeah, you focused your pitch on him being an integral
saying
character that grows,
is-
and I'm telling you that he can't grow. And my character
we're-
is a stone for her to stand on. He doesn't have to grow; he just has to be that rock for her. That you got to approach it.
But
the
I
right
think
way if you're
that
gonna pitch
rock
it
is
that way.
actually sand. It weakens your character, Kim. It takes away her power.
So let's get into final thoughts. Kim, why is yours the best integration of these movies and the best movie because of the addition?
Adding an immortal to a movie with an ageless person is not a stretch of the imagination. It doesn't break anyone's disbelief like having an android in a modern day setting would. And I think just overall, it's gives the opportunity to elevate the story to one more level from where it's at in terms of being a romance drama and having the ability for her to have a peer. She never gets the chance to have a peer in her movie. She always has to have people older than her, younger than her, people aging around her. She loses out on that one critical aspect that other shows with immortality, other movies with immortality tend to leverage in a very strong way. So giving him that smaller role in the movie just to serve as like a grounding rod for her gives her the opportunity to have that and leverage that to its fullest without corrupting the rest of the story around it, because she's on her own journey. He's just there as like a flashback reference point for when she needs, okay, what do I need to do in this situation? It's not something that takes away her ability to make her own choices and her own decisions, but it's something that enhances the story by giving her that one extra relationship dynamic that she doesn't have in her movie currently.
Yusuf. Same question.
Yeah, Data would just be like the mirror image of Julia Roberts in this case. Both of them are just trying to find a new experience, a new way to connect with the world and growing. It's almost like I don't know, like Joaquin Phoenix falling in love with Scarlett Johansson over the phone. It's just another type of romance that Julia Roberts could encounter to just further build her emotional worth and just her worldly experiences that will drive her home and just build her up like a better human being.
Brian.
I understand that Andy Sipowicz as an antagonist is not a likable character. I understand that. The thing about The Dark Knight, I know that people think I'm trying to like pump more storyline into an already big movie, but there are corrupt cops in The Dark Knight. The whole story hinges on part of the story hinges on Two-Face kind of uncovering this corruption. He could not only serve as our Harvey Bullock character, but he could elevate that storyline too. And that way, in the end, when Two-Face confronts them, this would be a character you would actually know and you would actually have a connection to. We know, and we would get a reveal of why he's been so adamant about bringing down the bat and why he's been so involved. And so you could add him as a supplementary antagonist while still keeping the core structure of the movie together. I think aside from what we said about Data and how what he would bring to that doesn't, I think Eat, Pray, Love just loses in the quote unquote best movie arena. I don't think there's any chance it stands as acclaimed or as well regarded as the other two movies. Age of Adeline is closer, but again, when I think about that movie, I think about her journey and her struggle, and part of it is her not having a support system and how she has to deal with that. And even though this character, I don't necessarily think the way you brought him in is bad. I think it does a detriment to the film as a whole for her to add that character, someone she can relate to in that way. Part of it is about how isolated she is.
Oh, we have our work cut out for us, Randall. So I don't know if there's any facts really that were mentioned specifically that change the nature of these three films. Is there anything you noticed?
Nothing that came to that like really stuck out to me while I was looking. I was just kind of like looking over the movies, like general synopsises and things of that nature.
What were the thoughts from social? Were you able to watch during? I know that this was
I was watching a little bit. A lot of the ones I've seen was Helena from Orphan Black. To just be brought in, like I guess Kingsman was a series that they thought she could
integrate her,
seamlessly, like as a character, just because she's so many different types of characters in that show. So that it'd be interesting. Let's see.
Did you
too much?
Did you have a horse in this race?
Honestly, towards the at first I kind of narrowed it down, but then it just all went to crap at the end. And I honestly after just thinking about it all breaking down, I think the best overall argument fell to probably Kim. With just the idea, I thought that it would work best in terms of being able to seamlessly blend in with the movie. And
so for me, when I was listening to the three pitches, Yusuf, I understand where you were coming from here. You were definitely taking the approach of replacing a character, but I understood your pitch. I understood what you wanted to do with Data, and I think that did clearly come across to me. I just think that they are right that you have changed the dynamic of the film, but largely because of the way you were approaching the idea from your understanding of the question. So I think that hurt you in the end, and it did come down between Brian and Kim for me. So between Brian and Kim, this will decide who moves on. Both of you presented amazing arguments. Just like Yusuf's, I love how you guys, I love the movie that you picked. I agree that they're all appropriate. I'm interested in all three of these stories. Kim, I really like the idea of how you utilize Duncan in this film as sort of like that guide to the experiences that she's having. Brian, I think you're absolutely right. A corrupt cop in a Batman world is as seamless as it gets. So I had to look for things between your two arguments that didn't work for me. Yusuf heavily pointed out with Brian that, another story arc, another story arc in a movie with a lot of story arcs. And then Brian really hit on Kim with how her journey is very altered by having a guide, where the beauty of that story is her growth. So there are definitely negatives to both. So at the end of the day, one argument stuck with me as the one that takes the other out. And that is when it was suggested that people would be running around the Highlander universe trying to take her head because she's immortal and he's immortal and she's stuck in that world. So with him included in it, that means immortals are there. So having people running around trying to behead each other changes the meaning of that story, where Brian's integration is seamless. I can picture in my head moments when that character is in that movie and the movie doesn't break because of it. So for me, Brian gets the point. And Brian, you are moving on, sir, to try to reclaim your belt. But well fought by everyone. That was a great round.
Brutal, you guys.
Congratulations. That was really well fought. So it's going to be a little while before we see this number one contenders match, because we're going to have to do a second group to see who will join you and Kimber in that match. But for a while, you get to relax and come back here and help us judge for a little bit. Brian, you won. Let's tell everybody where to find you.
Hey, if you enjoyed my particular brand of ranting and lunacy, you can find me on the DVD Bunker, which is my personal flagship show. I also have a new show available now, The Flyover State of Film. DVD Bunker old episodes are right here on the TUFF channel if you want to check them out. Also, uncut versions of those are available on iTunes and SoundCloud and wherever you get podcasts. And I'm working on new content. I swear I have 3 new episodes recorded. As soon as I get out all these old ones, I'm going to start putting out new stuff. In the meantime, Flyover State of Film every 2 weeks, and we're having a blast on that one too. Yusuf, you know a little something about Flyover State of Film, don't you, buddy?
I've never heard of it.
Oh, sorry. Find me on Twitter @Herskillies.
Awesome. Yusuf, tell them where to find you, buddy.
You can find me on Twitter at Yusuf Konasa. I have a website, whyilovemovies.com, where I just talk about movies, why I love them. And I talk my way into a fight, and I talk my way into a podcast, and where you can listen to me and Brian and our good friends TJ and Joe, just talking about random movies and just having fun, drinking along.
You know, it's never fun to leave the show with a 0, and I get that, but no one should ever leave and think that they didn't fight well. You had a great fight today. I really enjoyed your arguments, so there is no shame.
You had to win one to get here anyway, so
you know,
and I was on that show trying to sabotage you as hard as possible, and it didn't work. So.
And I was on the last question trying to sabotage you, and it didn't work either. So.
But you did a great job today, and we're really glad that you were here. So thanks for joining us. Kim Hanley, tell everybody where to find you.
You can find me on Twitter @_Kim Hanley, and then I recently spun up a blog, kiminthekingdom.wordpress.com. There's not a ton of stuff on there just yet, but I'm starting to build it up a little bit and just post about life in Orlando and working for Disney, like Jack mentioned at the top of the show. And it's just it's a good time. It's a good. I think it's interact with me there or on Twitter, and we'll just chit chat.
And about 10 years from now, when the Disney robots are killing us all, we're going to find her blog and we're going to be like, here was the clues. They were all right here in this blog. We should have known. We should have seen it coming. Kim, thank you so much for being a part of the show. You did a great job today. Excellent fight. Randall, thank you again for helping us out. We really appreciate it. Can you tell everybody where to find you?
Thank you for having me. And of course, you can always find me on Twitter @RandallSands. And just generally hanging around, causing mayhem and
foolishness.
Yeah, a bunch of foolishness.
Thank you again for being here, everybody. I'm Jack Shipley. I'm JRS Pipboy 2008 on Twitter. Feel free to hit me up. Tell me I'm a terrible judge. That's fine if you like. We will be back in 1 month in September. We're going to be doing a special couples show. We did the one last season. It was really fun. So this time, April Dawn and JTE from JTE Movie Thinks and Screen Junkies will be joining us for a wonderful couples show. It's going to be fun, lighthearted, kind of get a chance to take a break from all the serious fighting, and then we'll be back again in October with the next round of battles for the ¡1 contendership. So thank you so much for everybody joining us today. We really appreciate you coming out and joining us. We'll see you next time on Fan Friction, and bye-bye. That's it. Have a good one.